Hi, I'm Milton Rendell and welcome to Real News Friday. Another busy week, inquiry still maintaining, but we possibly could see a bit of a slowdown just prior to Christmas, but that wouldn't be surprising. We won't see the migration of people that we normally would see around this time of year, mainly because of the restrictions which we do have within Western Australia. Some statistics being released by the Real Estate Institute WA. They're saying that the average amount of sales per week in Western Australia for this year are 865, and last year 680. Now, last year's statistic to say on average 680, I think may be a bit of an overstatement. I think it would have been less than that when you consider or if you have to look at this probably last year in two sections, because at the beginning of the year obviously COVID had hit, sales there's a lot of things that were happening within sales, so a lot of those figures would be lower. So the second half would have been much higher than I think than 680 and indicated. So I'm not sure that that's a true reflection of where the market has shifted. In terms of stock, there's 1% less stock than it was a year ago, so we're still maintaining in a similar market. That would be a good assumption. But they threw out the figure that we're 50% less listings than there were 3 years ago. I think that's a blowout statistic. You got to remember, not as much was selling 3 years ago. So I think you've got to be careful which figures you worship. So we're just got to be mindful of that sort of stuff. So I think when people ask me about the market, I say, look, just look in your own backyard, what's happening in your own backyard, and what your own gut feel is on it. They are talking about prices continuing to move up. But you've also got to remember we still haven't reached the peaks of 2014, 2015, and there's still a lot of sellers out there and landlords who have purchased around that period that are still in a negative equity situation. So we've still got that to sort of flush through the system. So even if some of those prices rise, they're only going to be back to where they were 7 or 8 years ago. So some of the figures you've sort of got to look a little bit deeper and analyse deeper. Now, others have bought outside those periods are seeing some tremendous figures. And the other thing is you've got to consider a suburb by suburb profile. Midvale is not the same as Subiaco. It's just a fact of life. One in lifestyle and second in prices and also in demand. So you've got to be careful. It's all it can be about timing. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible. What's happening though, we are seeing a wave coming towards our area, which is because of our affordability in and around the Midland area, that people are seeing the value and our close proximity to the city, obviously to the junction of Great Northern Highway and Great Eastern Highway, and also the benefit of you've got National Park just on your doorstep, you've got a river, you got the Swan Valley, etc. So there are a lot of features that people haven't previously looked at and haven't identified the lifestyle to our particular area, which I think now they're starting to see, but what it's been driven by has been more by price than probably they would have probably been on their shopping list originally. So I think we're going to have a reintroduction of people to our area, or if you like, call a rediscovery of our area. So that's going to be an interesting one. Now, just on a couple of other things, there are talks about some amendments to the Residential Tenancy Act in 2022, so we'll try and keep you up to date with those. They're saying that it is probably going to be a bit tougher on landlords. We will see. I don't know if that's just a propaganda talk or whether that's real. What we are seeing at the moment, which is a trend, is that a lot of the private rentals are experiencing huge problems. Why? You got to remember that when the times were tougher, private landlords were putting in whoever they could get and couldn't do the research we can do as agents. And now they're having tenants who won't move. And we're hearing a lot of that sort of cases, because what's happening as the market's going up, everyone is trying to put their rents up, which is flushing out some of these, poor's not the word, not as good tenants. There's probably, I don't want to call people undesirable, but there's a reality of life. There are good tenants and there's bad tenants. And the bad tenants, doesn't matter which market it is, it doesn't matter what their income is, it's just their outlook on life, etc. And there's still a lot of those that still pop up at times. And I think the private sector or private landlords are seeing that hitting them fairly hard. Seeing properties where the contracts have fallen apart in terms of sales because the tenants refuse to move because they can't find somewhere else to live. The reason they can't find it to live because they've got a poor rent history, they haven't paid the rent, a whole pile of other things, and this person, the owner's been too kind, and this is the one I would say to a lot of landlords out there: you've been too kind, and it's backfired on you. Don't get me wrong, we have to respect our tenants. There's a lot of fantastic tenants, there's a lot of terrific people that rent property, don't get me wrong. But the bad element is the bad element, and the private landlords are getting hit fairly hard, and we're seeing that probably more and more in the last probably 6 to 9 months, and we may see more of that in 2022. So just a little tip to the private landlords out there: you really don't listen to the story, look at the financials and the affordability of the potential tenant going into the property. I can tell you a story that'll make you cry just as much as anybody else does. You don't lease a property to a person because of a story. You lease it because of their affordability and also the fact that they'll protect your property as well. For those landlords who are out there who have been caught with these types of tenants, you know the emotional cost as well as the financial cost. And to be honest, the emotional cost quite often exceeds the financial cost. So just be aware of that. It's not a doomsday thing, but I just think that's part of our current economy. People are talking about rents still going up in 2022. It'll be interesting. There's also been talk about, there'll be a wave of people coming to West Australia when the borders open and all the rest of it. And I know, and it's probably, I'm going to probably talk not against, but in the opposite direction probably to where our Premier was. He's talking about spending millions of dollars on tourism, all the rest of it. WA hasn't got any closer to anywhere. It's still in the same place, and we still are a remote capital. So I think our tourism industry is still going to have the same struggles, because I don't know, if I was sitting in Tasmania, do I want to come to WA and maybe not be able to get out, or things change whilst we're here? Until that doubt about the decision making of our government changes in the perception of other people around around our country, it may slow us down, and that's something I think people need to consider as well. Not doom and gloom it, and I'm not certainly going to envy the government, but we've got to be conscious of the message that we're constantly sending. I know if I was coming here, yeah, lovely, there's no COVID, all the rest of it, but if I want to get back to where I'm supposed to go, if my mother's 93 years old, can I get back to see her? That's a different question. So that's also about lifestyle as well. It's not just all about just COVID in itself. So we'll see what unfolds. I think leading into Christmas, we're going to see plenty more announcements by governments around Australia. And I think the other wild card for 2022 will be the federal election. I think it's too early to even make any sort of forecast. I think most of the pundits are wrong at this particular stage. And I don't know about you guys, but coming into COVID and all the other things that we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years, very few of these economists have got it right, and very few of them have got our political situation right either. So I think it's just to see where common sense leads us. Hopefully, whatever government is elected, that they're able to unify the states into having more uniformity on how we can commute within our country. But that's another question in itself. All the best. Again, 2022, I think will continue to be great. How great, we don't know, but I think the current trends of today will continue. Probably the last thing I would say is that I did read one last report. Someone was saying there's going to be a lot more properties available for sale in 2022. I think the big wild card with that is, more than anything, is how the building industry is able to produce product in 2022. At the moment, they're dragging their heels, lacking people to do the work and lacking on materials. I think this could be the wild card for 2022, is the lack of materials more than anything, or lack of labour, may still continue to cause us frustration in 2022. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I can't see that changing in the next 3 to 6 months. Anyway, that's my thoughts today, just a little bit different outside the box. All the best. Look forward to speaking to you next week. And by the way, watched the Scorchers the other night. Those who came to our box on the night, thank you for coming. It was a good game, nice close one. Nothing like only 6 runs between the two teams. I'd rather see them win by more, but hey, go the Scorchers. All the best. Catch you next week.